Hey gang, Scott here. This is the next video in our blending mode series for ON1 Photo Raw and ON1 Effects, talking about the overlay blending mode. This is one of my favorites, especially for texture blending. Now you'll see an example of that in this video. If you haven't watched the overview of what blending modes are, some of the other videos in the series, check the show notes. There is a playlist that's having all of these videos land in it. So as the series continues, you can have one place to go and find everything. And really quick, if you are thinking about adding ON1 Photo Raw or ON1 Effects, any of the professional plugins to your toolkit, check the show notes. There's an offer code down there that can save you some money. If you use one of my links, it'll give me a little bit of support, won't cost you anything extra, and it helps to support videos like these. So let's talk about the overlay blending mode. In a nutshell, this mode will kind of increase contrast. It's kind of like I think of it as a valley, air quotes, valley type of blending mode, because it takes your histogram and kind of pushes contrast. So it makes the brights get brighter, the darks get darker, and you end up with like a little bit of a valley in between in your midtones. And I really like it for texture blending. And there's one other use case that I also really like it for as a finishing pop for like a contrast pop for landscapes. So let me show you the texture blending option first here, and we'll do that over in Photo Raw. I prefer to do my texture blending in layers, even though in Effects we do have the textures filter. There are some limitations in how I can position a texture with that filter, so I prefer to do things in a layered workflow. And you can access layers in ON1 Effects as well if you're using Effects by itself. But I will add in a texture. It tells me, yes, I'm going to make a layered photo. And I'll use this this texture from a pack that I have, a few textures I captured in Kyoto. And we'll add that in here. And by default, the texture shows up and it's made my photo invisible, right? The default blending mode is normal. Show me all the pixels, right? Different video talked about that. Well, we're going to change this blending mode to overlay. And I said overlay will do some contrast work for us, but we'll go down to overlay. And we can automatically see that things are just interesting, right? All those like scratches and lines and so forth are there. I see some of these like little curves and so forth from the original texture, right? Here's the original. And then we can see, here's some of those lines and scratches. The darker areas here are, just adding to the mood when we switch it to overlay. We can see some of that going on. And the reason I chose this texture is I have some interesting accents here. I like the almost the scratchiness that it gives this photo. Then I have all of my other controls, right? I can adjust that opacity, and maybe for the transform I might move this layer around because this is just a layer, right? I can move the pixels around. And I have my other masking controls and everything else, so if I don't want the texture affecting certain parts of things, that's all the things we get into when we're doing texture blending and crafting a multi-layered photo. We can do all the masking that we want. The key thing here is that overlay blend mode, very, very nice for textures. It just gives a good level of having the texture show through, but in a nuanced way, and it just works very, very well. So play with overlay as a good starting point when you're working with textures. Now I mentioned there's another my favorite use cases for overlay, and that's as a finishing contrast pop for my landscape work. And I think I've done a separate video on this before, but it bears repeating because it's very simple to do. You can do it directly in Effects. If layered workflows are scary to you, you're just not ready for those right now, you're going to love this because you just do it with Effects. And as a matter of fact, I'll show this to you just using ON1 Effects, like as a straight app. I'll use it as a plugin to Lightroom, but if you're just running Effects by itself, running it from Lightroom, Capture One, Photoshop, this is how it works. All right, I am in ON1 Effects as a plugin. We see we just have the Effects and Local tabs. I've done a little bit of work to the photo, just a tiny bit of color adjustment using the desert style there. So the overlay blending mode for giving a final contrast pop, here's the recipe. Add the color enhancer filter, switch the blending mode to overlay and reduce its opacity to in the neighborhood of 20%. Just like this. Add the filter, color enhancer, blending options, overlay, around 20%, before and after. Now I did that quickly, so for those of you that are impatient, you got the information, you know what to go do. Let's explain just what happened here now, okay? So I'm going to remove that filter. What I have is this set of pixels, right? We're looking at this photo, it's done some adjustments, and I see this set of pixels. When I add the color enhancer filter, nothing changes. All of the sliders are 0. This is the filter that I like to use when I'm tapping into blending modes as a finishing touch, where I'm kind of blending my photo with itself. So all the pixels that we had here, I'm feeding into the next filter in the stack, right? Filters work from the bottom up. I'm feeding in all the results into the color enhancer. When I change the blending mode to overlay, it says, great, I'll mix that and I'll do this interesting contrast boost. I look at the levels. Before, you see how things are kind of crunched together here? And then after, we get that valley in the histogram. That's what's going on. It's increasing the contrast, and it's generally way too much for a finishing touch. So we take the opacity down, and usually in the neighborhood of the 20% range, it looks really nice before and after. It's a really good finishing touch for any of your, if you're doing preset work. But this one is like a finishing touch for your landscapes. It's a very nice pop, and it's very simple to do. And the magic is in the blending mode. There isn't any slider adjustments here. It's just taking what you finished as like, I like this photo. I think I'm done with it. Try this as a little accent at the end, and you may like it even more. So that is the overlay blend mode. Great for textures. Really nice as a finishing touch to get a little contrast pop. Any other questions? Go ahead and drop them below. And until next time, my name's Scott Davenport. Have fun.